everyone. Welcome back to the Freelancer Summit, the second annual Freelancer Summit 2022. And I'm here with a special guest from the Work From Anywhere team, John Lee. We're happy to have you. Welcome to the Freelancer Summit.
Thank you very much, Tony. Great to be here with you and all the audience today.
Thank you. Thank you. Where are you calling in from?
Calling in from Portugal. We actually only just moved to Portugal about 4 weeks ago. We've had an interesting journey over the last couple of years. My eldest, Rosa, we've got 3 kids. Rosa's the eldest. She's lived in 4 different countries. So she's only, as I said, she's only 5 years of age. She's experienced a lot already. But for now, we're living in Portugal and loving it.
Wow. Yeah, so that's why we thought, you know what, you might be the best person for this topic, which is what is digital nomadism. It's kind of something new for most of us. So we thought, you know what, let's look for the best person who's literally experienced it and who's living it, you know, to help us, you know, understand more what it is and how we can benefit. So I guess that brings me to my first question. What is digital nomadism?
That's a great question, and it's a definition that is evolving all the time. But if you go back to the original definition of it, and the definition, I guess, is used by most people, it's basically people who are location independent and who use technology to perform their job remotely. And so if you think about that for a second, people that are location dependent, people who can be location independent, it's like people going off for a year, a couple of years, and traveling around the world. And of course, the beauty we have nowadays is with technology, look at us now here today. We are having this conference here today remotely. And that's the beauty about it. And so there's so many other possibilities with it. But that's the definition as it is today. But what's fascinating is that definition, or how we interpret it, is beginning to change, because there's so many people that actually do have a location, but actually want to spend a couple of months a year actually traveling and exploring the earth. So that's an interesting one to see how that's shifting.
Yeah, so can you say, you know what, digital nomadism is mainly for freelancers, people already in the freelancing space, or it's someone even who has a corporate job, but the job is maybe hybrid or is that much flexible?
Well, I think digital nomadism is very well suited to people that are contractors or freelancers, that they have that flexibility to decide when and where they work. As soon as you are attached to a company, either as, let's say, for example, as an employee, you tend to be stuck either at one, let's say, legal entity. But even if you're working as sometimes as a contractor or even via an employer of record, you tend to, the companies tend to want to have some stability as to where you're going to be. So you tend to have, if you are working directly for a company, you know, they don't want to have the risk of people moving into all sorts of different countries around the world. They want to narrow the countries that you're going to be traveling in. So by its very definition, digital nomadism doesn't really suit, let's say, people working for companies. Although saying that, the possibility of people working for a couple of weeks or months a year, 2 or 3 months a year, that's definitely not ruled out if you work with a company in many cases. But certainly the concept of location dependence, it's very well suited to freelancers.
So basically can even be in the same country, right? You know, switching cities, that's the same thing, right?
Well, yeah, exactly. And what is interesting is, you know, you do have to be careful. You've got to be conscious. There may be other factors you've got to be conscious of. You know, first of all, you've got to look after your own taxes and whatnot. You've got to be careful. Sometimes, you know, working as a freelancer, which countries you go into for tax reasons, or it could be for data privacy and security, for example. It could be employment law, many other reasons as well. So just because you're a freelancer, it doesn't give you a carte blanche to work wherever you want. If you are working extensively with a company, you need to make sure and get their approval to a degree for where you go. But in general, you know, this is the beauty about freelancers. I've been there myself. This is one of the reasons why I've traveled to so many countries, is because I've been able to do freelancing or work for my own company.
Got you. And just so you know, Joan and his team have, I think it's a weekly or twice a month, you know, show that comes up on YouTube and other social media platforms. Yeah, just wanted to give a shout out to that.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. We've had you on one of the episodes. It's great.
Yeah. So yeah, check that out. And so I guess my next question was around, so is that the future of work? Because I guess people will ask, like, you know, there was COVID and we were kind of forced to get into that space. Is that still going to be the same going into the future, or it's going to be hybrid, or it's going to move back to people working in offices full-time again?
Well, from all of the indications that we're seeing, it's been fascinating to see the evolution, because one of the things we've really observed is how there's been a shift in people's values. That if you think about it, before COVID, we were all, so many of us, running around in circles. COVID forced us to stand still for a period of time and to observe and to think and rethink what's important to our lives. And for some people, it was family. For some other people, it was travel. For some people, it was just rethinking how they value work and how work values them as individuals. And so with that, it kind of propelled us into this movement whereby people, are not prepared to just go back to the way it was. And so there's certainly some industries, some companies, some company cultures will go back to the office full time. And some of them will have a brilliant office experience. I'm sure Google will do a great job. Whereas many other companies, especially if they have the technology to be able to remote work, they are fundamentally going to shift. And you're going to see this battle for talent. We're already seeing it with the Great Resignation, where people are more or less going to leave their employers. And they already did last year if they forced them back into the office. What's fascinating to see is how that played out last year for domestic, let's say, remote work. Where this gets interesting, Toyi, is when we talk about this year, where it's, let's say, international remote work, where people who want to spend a couple of weeks or months working remotely abroad. Some companies are going to say, yeah, you can do it, no problem. If you're an employee, you can do it. If you're a freelancer, a contractor, no problem. Other companies are going to say, no, we're not going to allow you to do it, forget it. Those companies, I'm really interested to see, once COVID restrictions really drop, I'm fascinated to see that battle for talent and how that impacts on so many different industries.
Got you. I did see a video, I think a couple of weeks ago, about Costa Rica. Like, there are a lot of people who are moving from the United States to Costa Rica to work from there because, it has these nice beaches, great economy, and it also has good taxes and regulations. So people have been moving there. But the question now was becoming to the local population. Like, you're someone who's getting their income from the States, which is a bit high, and then you come into Costa Rica, and then, you buy out these homes, and then basically the cost of living raises. So I would like to ask, like, what digital nomadism has in connection to tourism and in connection to the local, population benefiting from people who are working and living in your country.
Sure. Well, one of the things that I was studying and having a look at with Culture for Me, one of my previous startups, is we looked at the impact of over-tourism. And one of the challenges of over-tourism is we take two different profiles of tourists. The profile one is stag parties or hen parties, people coming for just a couple of nights, coming to a destination just to get drunk. They cause a lot of disruption. They don't spend very much. And the local economy doesn't get very much out of it. There's also high carbon emissions, for lots of planes going in and out. You take cruise passengers, lower carbon emissions because they're going, via boat, but still they're coming into a destination at the peak point of the day, again, bringing a lot of volumes there. Are they spending necessarily a lot? A lot of them are not. And so the tourism revenues from that destination and the friction caused by both of those groups is what you would call high. The tourism revenues is relatively low. And so the destinations have to get a lot of volumes of these cruise passengers and stag parties just to even get any kind of a decent tourism revenues from it. Now you contrast that for a second with digital nomads. Digital nomads, they're typically in a destination for more than a couple of weeks. They're very often there for maybe 6 months. It's rare that a digital nomad will go into a destination just for a day or two. They're there to try and use the opportunity to have a base, find co-working spaces, get to know the local culture, get to know the local people. And yes, while it's true for one typical day, their spend might not be the equivalent of a cruise passenger on that same day. When you count it over time, the destinations get much bigger tourism revenues from that. And at the same time, if you attract the right digital nomads, there's less friction, there's more integration, there's more like pollination, cross-pollination of innovation and ideas. So this is an enormous opportunity. It's one of the reasons why there's been a lot of countries in the world introducing these digital nomad visas, where they basically say, listen, you come over to our country for 6 months a year, you don't have to pay any income tax. You pay income tax in your home country. You come over to us. We want people that earn a certain minimum amount. Maybe you work in technology, whatever it is. We'll bring you to our country. And they know that even if they don't charge income tax, they will be able to get more tourism revenues through sales tax and other spending. But much more important than that, there's less friction and there's more cross-pollination of ideas and technology and innovation. So that becomes fascinating, because all of a sudden, and the first time in humankind's real history, we've true mobility and movement of people to a degree you just never had before. We always had flights. We had the creation of the internet 20 years ago, but really we're only starting to see the benefits of it being realized after COVID, with all of this, let's say, new dynamics that are happening with international remote work.
That's great. That's very insightful. I didn't think about around the sales tax and the digital nomad visa. I think all of those things are great. So what questions should someone ask themselves before they consider being a digital nomad?
Well, I think, I'm not going to lie, being a freelancer and using the power of platforms like AfriBlocks and TopTal and Upper, all those different solutions are absolutely fantastic, because you can plug and play and you can turn it up and down as you want. You can go hard at the work for a couple of weeks and then maybe take a week or two off. But what's really beautiful about those kind of solutions is, or you can also do it directly yourself. You don't have to do it through a platform. You can do it through yourself if you want your own business. But the bottom line is, by being a freelancer, you have that flexibility to decide when and where and how you work. If you work for a company, you've got to be very, very careful of the companies that you work for. Some companies are embracing, to a degree, location dependent. Some companies don't even have a head office. You're looking at, for example, many Silicon Valley companies are embracing this. They're recognizing they can reduce their real estate costs significantly, and at the same time embrace flexibility and have better productivity and well-being of their employees, if they manage the tax risks, importantly. But bottom line is that, if you can work for those kind of companies, fantastic. Otherwise, if you want to go by the freelancer route, fantastic. But of course, you have to look at the type of, you've got to look at the type of qualification that you have. If you're a lawyer and you're only qualified in that country, it's going to be much harder to, go and do that the other side of the world. Whereas, for example, if you're in finance, or if you're a designer, or if you work in technology, or you're a product manager, whatever it might be, there's lots of different other avenues you can go to. There's a tremendous opportunity in those. And what's great is that you can use geo arbitrage. You can work, for example, you can be living in a low-cost country and you could be working for a client in a high-cost country, and all of a sudden using that opportunity to play the geo arbitrage play in more ways than one.
Got you. We did a meetup in Cape Town, I think just towards the end of last year. And, there's a great startup ecosystem there. There are hubs, a lot of hubs there, good priced Airbnbs and things like that. So I guess what I want to check is, for you being in Portugal, which African countries you personally and, your colleagues have been going to a lot as digital nomads. They work there for a year at a time, 6 months. Which countries in Africa are at the top of the list?
Well, first of all, there's a ton of countries at the top of our list. Funny enough, my Culture Me intercultural startup, that idea, that concept started in Africa back in 2016. We were visiting Rwanda, Tanzania. There's a number of different countries we were visiting, and we got that inspiration from being in Africa. And so for me, Africa is as a continent, has a very special place in my heart. And I would say, if we look at what's happening now, we actually looked at potentially going to Africa just last Christmas gone by, but COVID stopped us. I mean, between COVID and the kids' education, looking after kids, a few different challenges came up. But for us, we're very, very keen to get over and visit Africa at some stage in the next year. From speaking to people, one of the things that Africa is lagging a bit behind, where there's an opportunity, is on digital nomad visas. I think South Africa is going to be one of the first ones to launch a digital nomad visa over the course of the next couple of months, and I'm sure there will be a few more. But there are certainly, let's say, not digital nomad visas, but there are other ones as well to think about. I mean, for example, Cape Verde is certainly one we're seeing. I've been following the work that Gonzalo Hall has been doing there, for example. Also Mauritius, although it is more expensive than Mauritius, to be fair. I'd be interested to see what happens in Kenya, for example, looking at the countries that have a very, very strong ease of doing business index as well. Rwanda as well. Rwanda is one which is also been very far ahead in a few different aspects as well. So for me, I'm expecting that there will be a tremendous opportunity of flows of people going there. As of right now, the biggest challenge were a lot of people who were going to go, but then Omicron happened, that blocked everything off. But I'm curious to see what happens over the next couple of weeks and months. To be fair, I mean, one of the things what we could see when we were looking at the data, our work from anywhere data and the requests and trends, basically it was about to go through a significant explosion. We started seeing a post-COVID recovery in around July, August, September last year. All of a sudden, Omicron happened, it fell right back down. And then it started to come back up. Then obviously we had everything going on in Ukraine, for example, pulled it back, certainly from a European perspective, people being a bit more cautious. But we do expect that all going well over the next couple of months, that will start to increase again. And certainly the requests and the intentions to book, we're certainly seeing that in the data. One of the ones to look at is nomadlists.com. Like Nomadlists, great community. There's some very interesting data points that they have on what's happening with the requests for nomads and where the activity is.
Got you. I did see Namibia as well. There's some, places there that people are going.
Absolutely.
Anyways, I want to ask about, some things that you're doing with your team from Work From Anywhere. Any new things that are coming up? Any, things that stuff like that?
Well, there is. The first thing is, why is my boss saying no to work from anywhere? It's a question we got again and again and again for a lot of employees who contact us. We also got, a number of freelancers and contractors getting in touch and saying, why is my company, I'm a freelancer, why is my company I'm doing a lot of work for saying I can't work in a certain country? And so what we ended up doing is we also got the same requests coming from companies coming to us saying, how can we manage a work from anywhere policy? So what we ended up doing is we ended up spending a number of months. We surveyed over and spoke to over 110 companies who employ over 2.7 million people all around the world in various different positions. And we asked them, okay, how are you handling work from anywhere? Where do you see the future? What are the biggest risks? What are the biggest challenges? How do you deal with this? What are the best tools and tips you've seen? So we actually launched that. We actually released it about 2 weeks ago. So it's a free resource. It's available on the website. If you're working for a company that is not so sure about it, show them this resource. It will give them some practical steps and people to follow who are very interested in this space. Separately as well, we also have one of the things we've actually focused in on is that the number one risk or the number one reason most companies say no to work from anywhere is a thing called permanent establishment. It's basically the risk that by somebody working in a country, it's going to trigger not just income tax, but also corporation tax risks, which is obviously much more expensive for a company. So what we've done is we've set up a whole kind of permanent establishment kind of a product to make it very clear for a number of countries, how much does it cost if you want to get one person checked or 3 people, or if you want to get a whole country, let's say, strategy ready for that in place. So we're very excited about that. And we'll see how that one goes.
That's great. Thank you so much for joining us. So I'm Tongai Choto, co-founder of AfriBlocks. And again, I'm here with John Lee. He's the co-founder of Work From Anywhere, which is a global tech marketplace to help companies with remote workers to make work from anywhere work. So that's John Lee for us, and that's all from me from AfriBlocks. Please stay tuned for the next talks. We have amazing speakers. We have amazing discussions. Thank you so much, John.
Thank you very much.
All right.